Hello and welcome to the show. I am so excited to be joined today by Catherine Bennett. Catherine is the marketing director at Impact Utah, and Impact is helping manufacturers across the great state of Utah to improve their branding and grow their businesses. Catherine is also the founder of Backpack Marketing, which is a branding and marketing agency. And so excited to talk branding today with Catherine. Catherine, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm so good. Thank you so much for having me. I'm a nerd about all this, so I'm so excited to dig into it with you.
Oh, I can't wait to. And we actually have joining us today my dear friend Tom. Tom actually owns a branding and marketing firm too, and I actually met him in person, live and in the flesh this morning. We both broke bread this morning for breakfast. So Tom is fantastic. If you can connect with Tom, you should. He is just a master at all of this. So, all right. Well, here
I'm
we
sure I could learn from him too. Like connect me with Tom.
I'm sure we can all learn from each other, right?
Absolutely.
So let's dive in. Let's talk about. I want to learn more a little bit about your journey, Catherine, and how you ended up in marketing. I see that you have a really deep experience in journalism. That's what you studied in college, and you started out as a journalist. And tell me, what led you to marketing? What was that journey like for you?
So it's a windy road, but I think
Usually.
as a young person or even in high school and earlier, I knew that writing was a strength of mine.
Mm,
I also knew that a lot of logical subjects were not. I was very a conceptual person. Um, and I
mhm.
loved people. I loved like the psychology of people, but didn't quite understand how everything connected
Yeah.
into a career path. So I did kind of like gave it my best effort. When I went to college, I got a degree in print journalism and English nonfiction writing. So just like very specifically, I liked real stories. I liked real people and connecting people to stories. And for some reason, no one ever said, that there's actually some tie-ins to marketing there, all the things you're talking about, like that. No one ever mentioned that to me. And I think it's maybe because I was so averse to numbers. I was just like, I'm not a
Mhm.
numbers girl. I'm not that person. So I like stayed away from the business schools, which is so sad in hindsight. I was just so afraid of I didn't have great experiences with my math teachers, and so I fled from numbers, which is too bad because I'm like, actually I could have done it. It's not but anyway, so I ended up getting not a job at all after college. I was like, I don't like print. I was the editor in chief of our college paper, so I got the full experience of leading this big team. Was like 40 students I was trying to herd all the time, and was writing constantly all kinds of articles, and it was an amazing experience. But
Mm.
I left and I said, I am not working for a newspaper. And so what do I do? Do I go back to school and become like an academic and become an English professor? I was so lost. And by the grace of something, got a marketing job like 9 months after school. And everything fell into place. And I thrived
Mm.
there and loved the team. And so I was the global communications manager for this nutritional company that actually manufactured their own products. So I
Very
actually got to also tour people through this facility. And then I started having kids, and that world kind of spat me out. It felt like the policies weren't for me as a new mom. And so I started my own business and worked with all like people in every industry, but I felt like except for manufacturing. That was when that was brand new to me.
Mm.
But then Impact Utah was looking at being a client of Backpack Marketing, and then I transitioned. But it's just been so fun over the course of my career so far to see just like in marketing, there's so much, right? And so you just
Yeah.
kind of get pieces at a time. And so I had this foundation of writing and asking really good questions and
Mhm.
drawing out the most important information and distilling that information quickly. And that has served me better in my career than anything else. Those simple key elements. And I still feel like it's the core of what my job is today, right? And especially in branding. Like you simplify these big ideas so that they're easily digestible and understandable, and help people connect to them. So
Oh, oh my gosh, I love all that. First of all, I love what you said about marketing being all about people, right? And all about understanding people and connecting with them. And I loved how you said that you were really good at asking great questions. I think that is a really important skill for marketers. Sometimes I know you mentioned about numbers, and I think people have this thing in their mindset that great marketers are great with numbers. I would argue great marketers are great at asking the right questions and really getting to know and understand an audience really, really well so that you can make sure that you're speaking to that audience in the best way. So I think being able to ask great questions is so important for branding, for any part of marketing. So fantastic for pointing that out. I think
yeah, and
that's
it's interesting. They're kind of two different. I mean, there are obviously people who are in the world. I feel like it's probably pretty rare that you have someone who really excels in both, because it's
yes,
two
true.
different kind of brains.
Yes.
But I absolutely think, like, for me, I have the core that's kind of more the people side. And so it takes more energy for me, like mental energy for me to want to dive. Like, I love diving into the numbers, but as far, there's just some elements of that it just takes more for me. And so it's probably on the other side, like my yin and yang. If I had a business partner in the future, I would look for that other piece, because you can learn that other side, but you don't naturally, your brain kind of just naturally feels comfortable in one, and the other one feels like more of a stretch. So
Oh, I can so relate to that. I have someone on my team who is fantastic at all things performance marketing.
we
And
love
I'm
that
the same as
person.
you.
Yeah.
I'm like, I can do it, but it takes a lot more effort and energy. And I'm going to have so much more impact if I stay here on this, on the, messaging, strategic side of things. And
Really.
then, so I think that's such a great point that it really takes both minds. And, it always takes a team to do great
Mhm.
marketing, really. So very cool. Well, what a journey. What a journey. So let's talk all
Really.
about branding. So I think a lot of the folks listening in are manufacturers. And branding, I think a lot of times seems like this fluffy bunny word, right? Like, what is branding? Why does it really matter? I talk to manufacturers and they're just like, I need ROI. I just need to make sales. That's what I care about. I want to grow my business today, and I need you to help me get there. And so the practical, sometimes these, very sensory practical manufacturers are like, branding, what is this? So why don't you like break it down for us? What exactly is branding and brand marketing, and why is it so important for businesses to be considering this?
Yeah, so my favorite definition of branding is what other people are saying about you when you're not in the room. It's not something that I mean, you're creating it, but it's more of a reaction to you, which I think is so true, because it's an atmosphere, it's an environment you're creating. I mean, most people know, I think, because if you're listening to like the chatter on LinkedIn or in those circles, it's not a logo. It's not a logo. A logo is a very small representation or symbol of that greater brand. But every interaction that you have in your business um, contributes to that brand and how people feel about the brand. So, the ones that come to mind automatically, the big brands that you interact with every day, why do you think the things that you think about them?
Mhm.
I don't know if it's Amazon, right? We get it, Amazon packages all the time. Like, what do we think immediately? Like convenience, because they follow through
Mhm.
on, there's just this huge marketplace of anything you could ever want, and it arrives when you ask it. When it says it's going to arrive, it arrives, like if you're a Prime member. So and it's consistent, you can trust it, and so it's also building this level of trust. So then the marketing side of that is when you put that into action. You take those, the and you're very intentional about it. So maybe Amazon wants to be they want that word convenient to be tied to their name. So how are they going to market in a way that's going to, you know I guess, shift our focus back to those words? I think about stuff like Do you remember? I don't even know if Coke still does this, but when Coca-Cola did like those bottles that have the names on it, you could like find your
Yes,
name on it.
yes, I remember that.
It's things like that where they they're promoting this idea of like friendship and this personal touch, and how does that make me feel about Coca-Cola, and does Coca-Cola actually care about me, it's not just me getting a drink because I'm thirsty, it's something bigger than that. And so there's really this subconscious element to it, because yeah, I want to go, like, I'm thirsty and I want to go get a Coke, but then I see that my name's on it or my friend's name is on it. And how does that make me feel?
Mhm.
And how does that increase my relationship with my brand over time? So brand marketing is not oh well, we're gonna get a brand marketing campaign going. It starts at the beginning. It's all the touch points together, and it's this culmination of the efforts that you make to get your name out there, to establish the relationships you want with your customers, and do it in a very strategic way that meets your objectives.
I love all of that. I was just talking with Tom this morning about this specifically, and how when you're building out or working with an organization to help them come up with branding or a brand strategy, how important it is to actually truly understand the culture of that business, really understand who's there that works there, what is it like behind the scenes there, what are the values that they really care about, and what is that relationship that they're having with their customers, right? Like that is so to be able to kind of distill that down and identify very succinctly and package that up into an awesome positioning statement that you can carry through across all of your marketing campaigns, wherever they may be, is can be really beautiful way to pull that all together.
And I think a big struggle with brand marketing is often consistency. I think we think, well, I've already said that before, or do I really need to continue harping on that? And you can do it in different creative ways, but it's this long-term commitment to these concepts and ideas, and literally like just words that define who you are. And how does that manifest itself in the marketing actions that I'm taking?
So beautiful. Love it. My friend Andrew here. Andrew, welcome to the show today. Thank you for joining us. Andrew says, I love what you said, Catherine. It's all about building a community to build your brand. And I would say that is becoming so much more important today for brands to grow. I work in content marketing, and the content marketing space is so saturated now, right? There's no dearth of content. All you need to do is just open up your TV and see all the different streaming platforms that are out there. And it's become so easy and so, much more affordable for people to create content, companies, whoever. And so I think because of that content saturation, there's so much, it's so important that you are really, really intentional about your branding and intentional about really cultivating a community that can help you grow your brand. What do you think about that, Catherine?
I think it's especially, well, it's important for every business, but I think B2B business, when it becomes this more like abstract idea, or like, what does that actually look like? I don't know what building a community looks like. But
Mm.
I actually think it's just, and especially if my heart goes out to the people who don't have a specific, like, aren't dialed in on their audience, because
Yes.
that is not, obviously that's number one. We hear that all, number one, who's your audience, know everything about them. But for impact, we know and any MEP center across, like, we know that our people are manufacturers in that state. So all you have to do, not all, it's an effort, but that you just need to start in building that community by having conversations and asking them what they need. How can we serve you? How can we, um, what are the problems you're facing? And then delivering like quickly on, okay, we're showing up for you. We're showing up for you. So when we actually, like, for me, when I create content, I start by, we always are talking to our customers, but I also, as like a more of a quick fix, if we need content, is I talk to our subject matter experts, the guys that are in on the floor with these manufacturers all the time. And so I just said, what are some things you've been seeing lately that, on repeat that seem to be big problems? And one of them said, oh, they think that shadowing is training. They think that shadowing is an okay way to just, someone comes in, they follow someone around, they're trained. And so I said, ooh, okay, reverse that. That is a piece of content. So I'm going to write a blog about why is shadowing not training. And so then everyone who has that problem, and make it very clear, clicks on that. And we probably had 150 people click on that, which was very high for our list anyway. And actually read that and comment and start a conversation with us. And I feel like they knew, and over time, because I've been there since September, but over the last 7 or 8 months, they can tell that we are really trying to meet them where they are. And it's not about us. It, like, genuinely is not. Like, yes, if we can help you and that results in money, revenue for us, great. But we have to approach you in this very genuine way for this marketing to feel subtle and real, and this community to feel real, and to build that trust. And so it's coming from that genuine place that's so important. And I think also mixing the channels, because blasting out blogs is not going to be near, like, that does not build a community. That's one element with people you already know who have met you and you've shake their hand in person. You've invited them to a lunch and learn. You've showed up at events they've invited, where everyone's showing up for each other. These are supplemental things that just help reinforce that we're showing up for you and we're listening to you. But yeah.
Oh, I love all of that. I think it's so important that you mentioned, oh my gosh, I lost my train of thought. I hate it when that happens.
I do too.
Oh man, you mentioned that you really get close to your subject matter experts and ask them what questions customers are asking. That's like ground zero. Like we love to recommend the same thing. The more that you can answer those questions that you're getting over and over and over again, and really create content that they care about in that way, the more that they're going to engage with your brand. And I think the first step to building a community is to build an engaged audience. That's step number one. Well, how do you build an engaged audience? You've got to create content that they care about and deliver it in the places where they're at. So, that's.
And I think a mix too, because it's not, and everyone's right, not in the same place, and they're in the funnel. There's some people are brand new. So we have like a podcast that's more of an awareness level. We just I started it just so we could start having more conversations with people. Well, one that we don't know, that might open us into new, audiences. But it's fun. It's a little more fluffy. It's not, we definitely do we have some episodes where we talk more specifically about like maybe a more technical problem that someone's facing, but people just want to hear their stories. They just want to hear, how did you become the owner of this huge machine shop and it's doing so well, and just things like that, and learning from each other. And so we like having that element, but then, okay, now they know us, they're aware of us. We want to teach them more about what exactly we can help them with now that they know we're their people. And so then we come in with like a webinar, and being really intentional about the time, the length, because manufacturers are incredibly busy. Like, just any time they're willing to give you is just, pack that 30 minutes as full as you can with actionable items. So we have that other element that's like, okay, now you're further in, and we're gonna give you some really specific direction and something you can apply to your business right now. And so that gains that trust a little bit more. So I think that's another important element, is just that mix of and being aware of how different people in different phases want to be spoken to.
Yeah, you're right. And it's not like this linear journey, and it never has been, but it's becoming so much more fragmented, how people find you, at what phase, what readiness that they are in their purchasing decision. Right. So I think you make a really great point that it's important for you to mix up the format of the content. You mentioned podcasting, which is such a great way to tell stories and to really promote that branding and increase that brand awareness from that level. And then figuring out how can you repurpose that content into bite-sized chunks in other ways, and share it across social media and other channels in those ways, so you can really meet your audience wherever they may be. Andrew chimes in. He says, we have to be great storytellers as well. Absolutely. And podcasting is an amazing way to storytell. Andrew has a great podcast. It's called Let's Be Diverse. I love it. It's fantastic. He interviews all these wonderful HR professionals and talks all about problems in the workplace. So if you have a chance, you got to
I'll have
tune
to
in.
check it out. That sounds amazing.
Yeah, and I love that. So, well, let's talk a little bit about personal branding, especially with manufacturers. Now, I've experienced firsthand resistance from leadership at these manufacturing companies with really putting their own personal brand out there. It's pretty common. They're like, and I get it. That's not how they built their business. They're usually really, really good. Like if they own a job shop or contract shop, they were the one that used to make the products. They're very, technical. And the idea of them actually having to go out and put their face out there or, share something can be, there's a lot of resistance I've experienced. What's your experience been there? And what do you think about personal branding specifically for manufacturers? What would you recommend?
First of all, I just have to say, I realize that the objectives with manufacturing and in their marketing and what ultimately the metrics they want to see, they're just different, right? They, you might be wanting to sell machine parts to another manufacturer, and how do I build a brand that's appealing to another So I did notice, I met actually last week, the founder of a machine shop who has a very long, I guess, deep career of building successful businesses. And he took on this role, and it's called Clean Machine. It's a machine shop, but it's huge. And they really take that name so seriously. It is the cleanest machine shop I have ever seen. It's just
Amazing.
when you walk in there, you have this level of appreciation for that detail and the precision. And so with that precision and that care, you begin to say, well, I would probably, and if they can speak, I'm not saying they're actually not great at speaking to that, I guess. So I saw that actually this brand existed, and there's a lot that they could do with it, comparing themselves to other machine shops in this Salt Lake Valley. And they're just not putting the words to it, but they're no matter what business you're in, what industry in manufacturing, whatever B2B, there is a way to stand out against the people that you are competing with. And whether that's in a more quirky, interesting way, memorable way, or, because everyone kind of has to abide by the same, there's not a lot of diversity in the industry. There are some industries like that. It's no, we have to check these boxes. And so how am I going to make myself different? There is a way every single time. And, whether that's through the voice that you use, taking a little bit of a risk with design, whatever that is, there's ways to do that. But tell me your question one more time. I went on this minor tangent with the beginning.
No, I love it. The question was, what do you recommend for manufacturers when it
personal
comes to
branding,
any kind of personal branding? What do you think about personal branding and its relationship to the company brand?
Yes. So I start with that just to say manufacturing needs branding. I mean, it needs it if you're serious about standing apart, and
Yes.
your personal brand connects to that larger brand. So when I think about personal branding recently, there's a company here called Gab Wireless that makes smart watches and phones for
My daughter has
teens.
one.
There you go.
She
And
has
so
one.
I don't know if you follow Nate Randall on LinkedIn, but he's the CEO. He uses his platform not to talk. I mean, yes, he'll post kind of intermittently about Gab. But that's not his focus. His focus is something he's really passionate about, which is helping single parents find jobs.
Mm,
And he has something like 75,000 followers, where a CEO of a company, maybe on the same level, that is not leveraging themselves as a human being,
mm,
is missing out on all of that added visibility. Because I guarantee the people that see Nate, 75,000 people that see him on LinkedIn, see the good he's doing, see how his passion is real. Like this, he's created this brand that, he's passionate about families and connection, and these core values he's created, they extend into his personal life. They're very much ingrained in who he is, and he demonstrates that repeatedly. So that trust is built easily with him because you can see it. You see it all the time. Um, Another person that I recently started following and is on a smaller scale. It's a husband and wife that own a machine shop in Utah. And she has the benefit of being a woman in the industry, one of the few that works in a machine shop or owns a machine shop, exactly. And she has like coined herself the lathe babe. like,
That's awesome.
and I just thought, I will remember her. I will not remember a single other one of these people, these machine shop owners that I have met. They just kind of fall to the back. I'm like, oh, it's so great to meet you. And then I cannot recall again. I need like that repetition with them, right? Like, oh yeah,
Mm,
I've met you. Oh yeah, and I need that repetition to remember, but there's not really something to hold on to. Where with her, I'm like, oh, first time I met you, like I need to meet you. You have a step. I don't know. She's just made who she is very clear, and she's taken that extra step to make herself memorable and committed to it. And
I love
so, and
it.
and she's created this kind of, I'm sure it's her, but a little bit of a persona around it. And
Mhm.
I think it's been really effective for her so far. So, I would just say, don't overthink don't overthink your personal branding, because a lot of times it's just the core of you. You pull out something that means something to you. You commit
Yes.
to that thing. Like Nate's a great example. But for me, I'm like, what are the pillars of who I am? How
Mm,
can I make myself? Because I was surprised. I went to an event yesterday and someone said, "Hey, I know you. Like I've seen you on LinkedIn. I've
mhm.
seen, you're the one that that sends the emails out, from Impact." And there's this consistency with my name being attached to this company, and trying to connect us with manufacturers that over time has like I've become I'm making assumptions, but I'm becoming a more and more trusted person that's attached to a company. So how much easier, right, is it to attach yourself to a human being than just like
Yes.
this abstract idea of a business. Well, and I realize it's a business, like, and sometimes you know what you need and you go for it. You're like a warm lead already and you go there. But for most people, it's a slow burn. And so how do you establish like that genuine connection? And I think a lot of times it's through a real person. Especially, I guess, maybe in my role with consulting, where it's all about relationships. Like they can choose any consultant to help them with like the issues they're facing. Why would they choose us? Um, so I think that and for many of these manufacturers, they're going to continue to have business whether or not they show their face, because it's a need and they're filling, there's the demand for it. However, the opportunities that they're missing out on because they're not spending the time to just show up every so often, to say, look what we're supporting. And it's honestly, a lot of times it's stuff they're already doing. They're just
Exactly.
not willing to, um, you know, share their voice and make it, because it feels uncomfortable. And I
Yep.
think honestly, in the next couple decades, that will start phasing out. I think it's right. Like I grew up in a world where I was instant messaging my friends
Mhm.
in I don't know, like early high school and middle school. And so it's never been it's never felt awkward to me. I think it is awkward to put yourself out, it's vulnerable and it feels a little
It
weird,
is.
or like maybe it's self-serving. But it's all about intention. If you go into it and you're not self-serving, you're and you're genuine about that, it's only helpful. It helps other people, honestly, to show up as you, show how you're making an impact in, I oftentimes promote other people through my content and say, here's resources, here's this. It's not just me, but I do add the elements. People know I'm a working mom. They know
Mhm.
what I value, like how I'm trying to balance life. They know that copy was kind of like the core of where my skill set grows. So someone's like, "Whoa, well, if I need to have copy questions, I can ask Catherine because she knows all about that." So there's these little things that's like I've defined myself, who I am, and it's helped people remember me, and in turn remember Impact Utah or whatever cause I'm associated with. Sorry, there's a lot of things I said, but
Oh, so much to unpack there. You talked a lot about trust, and you're absolutely right. Like being able to show up as your personal, authentic self is a way to build trust with you as a person, which then transfers to your brand or your company. And a lot of these companies, and it's about relationship building at scale. By showing up personally on these social media platforms, it's a way for you to, I mean, these business owners who've built these businesses, they're great at building relationships. They're great at building one-on-one relationships with these customers they've had sometimes for decades. Fantastic. If you want to talk to someone, a masterclass in building and maintaining relationships, talk to any manufacturing owner. Like they know how to build long-term loyal relationships with their customers. And so being able to show up as your authentic self for your customers online is just a way to amplify that. And to your point, just being authentic about it, just being you, who you are, showing up and providing value. But that's what it's all about, is how can I provide value to my audience by showing up personally? Like you mentioned, Nate Randall, how he's helping single parents find jobs. He's not out there tuning his own horn saying, look at me, I'm so amazing. He's saying, I want to help you find a job. You mentioned how you like to share about what it's like being a single mom. There are people that has so much value for single moms out there who are looking for help and support, and how they can navigate through that too. So if you kind of like spin it as like, it's not about me being like, rah, rah, look at me, I'm amazing, but what can I give? What can I provide value? That's going to make an impact. And that personality is showing your personality is becoming more and more important, especially with AI advances in AI. Who knows what that's going to be like in the next 5 to 10 years. The brands that are going to really stand out are the ones that are going to be the most human, I think.
I completely agree. It's the whole AI issue is such an interesting one because I can read a message and know immediately if
Mhm.
it's someone who actually has done, is taking an interest in me. And so it's just becoming very easy to weed out. And so you actually have to be kind of go over the top and being intentional about like, no, hi, I'm a person and I will talk to that person every single time.
Yeah.
But I think, yeah, there's, like you said, these people are already great at building relationships. It's just not translating online. And
Yep.
so they're missing out on potential opportunities that do exist there, that people are ready and excited to meet you online, and see how you can work together. And so if we can just get past I feel like it's more just being uncomfortable because it's
Yeah.
new. It's not. It's
Give
yeah.
us the first post, right? I'll never forget my first post on LinkedIn, Catherine. I was terrified to hit publish. And my first post was about social anxiety. I was like, I'm terrified to post this. I'm sweating, but I'm going to share. This is like, and
Which is
thank
Yeah, it's
goodness.
so funny because we make up these stories in our minds about what's real. And, you post it like mostly people don't, even if it's a weird, like you post one weird post and no one connects to it. I've posted them. We've all done it. It's like in the moment you're like, oh, I gotta post something. I don't know if this is all I got. You just go for it and you move on and you have another day, you know.
And
And I realize
if you
maybe
need
that it feels
help,
like
if you need help with what to post, that's why you have people like Catherine or other experts who can actually help you and say, here are some prompts for you. Here are some ideas for you on what you can post about, just to get you started and over that initial hump, if you will, of like, what do I share? There's
Yeah.
resources.
I think about, because it's on my list. I don't know if he'll see this, but our executive director has an incredible network. He's so well respected, and um, so many people love him. And he will comment on other people. He'll get on there, kind of. I've noticed sometimes, and make comments, but isn't a presence himself. And I just thought, man, if you could just snap a picture when you're at any of these 20 events you're at in a day, right? Like all these different engagements, and just post why it was meaningful to you, and tag the people who were there, and just make the connections, transfer that online. It just makes a huge difference in staying connected. We go to these networking events all the time, or go to expos, trade shows, and we meet people, and then it's like, oh, here's a business card and that's it. But to really be able to follow through on that relationship, when I meet people, I go, are you on LinkedIn? Like, that's the first thing I ask, so I can immediately say, I'm interested in like long term, continuing this conversation long term, and supporting you there, because it's just the easiest way to do it. So
That's how we met. We met at a conference last
there we
fall.
go. Exactly. There you go.
Yeah, and I think it's a way to build that consistency. Branding is about like people consistently having that same feeling. Like, I love what you said at the beginning about branding is the feeling that your customers have when they interact with you. And by showing up online consistently, they're able to feel that feeling again and again and again and again. And it builds that trust over time. And so maybe they may not be ready today to reach out and have that, conversation with you and your sales team. But the more that you show up for them again and again and bring that value to them, someday that's going to materialize into something.
Yeah. And if I was going to add, if you're not sure what, and you can be really intentional about your personal brand too. Because I have
Mhm.
a friend who created this really large brand, and he's now has a speaking career.
Oh.
And he's incredibly dynamic, and
Mhm.
he's a brand guy. He teaches brand, and he himself is like a walking brand. He wears a bright red suit, and he is I can't remember, his name's Ernie Harker, and he
Ernie
says like
Harper.
or he just has phrases for himself, right? Like he's gone all the way, right? He's branded himself all the way personally. But I think there's a spectrum there, right? Like
Yeah. You
there's
got to be
just
true to you.
being able to identify people with, oh, she's this person and this person, I can depend on her for these things, to, oh, this is like an entire character. Like this is for, I guess, Catherine 4.0. It's just like, it's her all the way at the edge. If I amplified everything about me, what would that look like? And so there's that level too, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, this is so fun. Andrew says building rapport, Nicole Donnelly. Yep, absolutely. And it's online, showing up online and having conversations with your contacts online is a great way to build that rapport. I have to share a quick story about a client of mine. This is a fierce woman-owned company in New York, Styco, and she's a fantastic CEO of this company. I had a chance to meet her in person last fall, and she started at the company working on the floor and actually making the product when she was a teenager. So cool. And she's totally a behind the scenes CEO, totally comfortable being behind the scenes. Being on camera is like, it's not comfortable. But every time she posts something online on LinkedIn, she gets such massive engagement. And it's like, every time I see it, I'm like, oh man, this is incredible. Like, people want to hear from these leaders, people, especially women who are, successful women and female entrepreneurs. People are craving and looking to those leaders as an example. They want to model that. They want to be able to emulate that in some way, shape, or form. And so, like, I think for these manufacturing companies who want to really be able to give back, it's a great way to give back. Just show up and share your stories and your experiences authentically. You don't have to be Ernie Harker and wear a red suit. You just got to be you. And there are
Absolutely.
people out there that are going to just eat it up and love it. It's going to be.
Absolutely.
Okay, well, let's talk about the core components of a solid branding strategy. Um, do you have is there like a, framework, or, our manufacturers love processes. Do you have like a process or a framework for creating a brand strategy? What would you say? How would you break that down for someone who's just getting started?
Yes. So I've branded or rebranded a number of businesses, and I have my own. I think each brand strategist you work with will probably have like a slightly different variation, but of the same elements. Um, for me, I've always started with, like we talked about, I ask them about everything I could possibly learn about their audience actually
Mhm.
first, because
Yeah.
you can start in with what's your purpose, what's your why, and sometimes that works, but I think there's just no way to really know and ask the right questions if you're not really solid on, and if do they have any research backing what they're even doing? This is like 101, but I want to dig into the audience as much as I can first, actually, and
Mhm.
then and have that deeper understanding. And I'm sure other people just dive right into the mission, and they dive right into that because um the mission basically, I mean, if you're not considering the audience as stating, here's what I think my people need, like the people want, and here's what I'm going to do on a daily basis to make that happen, or here's what that's going to look like. um and then the vision is like, here, you're right, like here's where we're going to end up decades down the road, like this is what we're working toward, and it's grand. But what if the vision is yours and doesn't connect with anyone else? You even from, and this is your customers, but it's also the team you're building, right?
Yeah.
If it's a mission or vision that doesn't. So often it's like there's a good concept there already, but I want to make sure we've really considered that audience and asked questions like, it's not just, right, like, how old are you, and what's the age range and the income? It's, what are you afraid of, and why would you say no to this? Why would you be opposed to this? And um just more why questions,
I love
and
that.
what are you driven by, and things like that. So from there, I can dig more into the leadership team itself, and what I mean, for me, I before I do mission, vision, those core elements, it's why. Yeah. And we've all read the book Start with Why, and I don't, for me, that's honestly the core of what I'm interested in marketing, is the
Mm.
basic level that, like, it's even hard to get to the why, right? And so you kind of ask why. It's kind of like a kid. It's like, well, why did you do this? Well, because I want to be the best um, food manufacturer in Utah. But why do you want to do that? Why is that? Why does that matter?
Yeah.
And then they answer that question. It's like, okay, but why does that matter? And so you get all the way down to this, like, and sometimes it's just as simple. It's just the simplest little phrase, right? That um, everyone remembers. I actually asked my husband last night, because he works for a company that takes their brand incredibly seriously. They have just gone all out with it. Every single person in that company can tell you what their mission statement is.
Oh, that's
He
incredible.
recited it in bed. He was like,
Wow.
well, we do, I'm trying to remember what it was. We free people to do great work, something like that. And then I remembered it like immediately, or at least the core of it. And I thought, wow, that's a great mission. Like, that's something anyone can get behind, right? But it also speaks to, it's HR software. So it totally
Mhm.
works. It's crafted so well. So it works externally and internally. But I mean, additionally, it's right. It's looking at your competitors too. So you understand the audience, but then at the same time, you need to be looking at what's around you. Oh, well, there's, this new brand that we launched, I mentioned to you, new consulting brand. It actually, because I inherited this brand. And so as I'm trying to build it out more, I noticed that there was a brand very similar. The color palette is very similar, the feel, the language, even there's all these words around performance and, you know, and I'm just like, how do I make this stand out? I'm like, we've got this black, white, and red color palette, which we need to do a V2 on, so it's built out more and makes us more distinguished. But how do I make this voice uniquely ours? Because, you know, or how do we make our products? I mean, it's the voice, but like deeper than that, we probably need to look more like on a strategic level in the business about adding more, adding something that's unique, really uniquely different to us. So in that, you actually start to question yourself. And when you know that you're questioning everything you've done, you're on the right track.
Ooh, I love that. When you know you're questioning
When you
everything.
have a like mini existential crisis, you know, in your business and you're just thinking, oh, I haven't thought of everything. You know, that's when you know you're doing some really solid brand work.
That is such a nugget. Oh, I love that. When you know you're questioning everything, you know you're on the right track.
Mm-hmm.
Such good advice. Because I think so much of the time we work with these companies and they're just so sure about exactly, and they haven't taken the time to ask those why statements that you so brilliantly talked about, like really why, and then going deeper. Why is that? Why is that? And really getting to the nuts and bolts of it is so
Yeah, brand
smart.
questions are incredibly difficult and they should feel really difficult to answer. And then
Yeah.
when you've gone through all, because it, right, you to arrive at this phrase or this sentence that embodies what you're trying to achieve, or to be able to quickly list your differentiators confidently and say, no,
Yeah.
these really are unique and different to us. You know, you've gone through kind of some hell before that to like arrive back at that point, because you've had to dig and change and reevaluate what you're doing. So,
That's so good. One of the questions, or there's two questions that I love to ask customers when I'm starting a new engagement. We like to interview customers at the very beginning to talk directly with them. And it's so funny. A lot of manufacturers are like, we don't want you to talk to our customers, which I'm like, why? I mean, they're going to love it. They're going
yeah,
to love that you're paying attention to them and that you want to hear from them, you know? Anyway, that's another side note.
absolutely.
But
Yeah.
anyway, two
Next
questions.
episode.
We could go down a rabbit hole with that. Two questions I love to ask is, what do you love about working with us? And what word comes to mind? What's one word that
Love
comes to
that.
your mind immediately when you think about our brand? And then
That's
you can
smart.
word map it out. And then you can see like what the themes are, like what consistent themes are happening. You can ask this in a search. So like we'll like to do one-on-one interviews and then follow up with a survey if we have a large enough. It completely depends on the client. But if you have a large enough set of customers that you can survey, ask them that question. And it's amazing when you word map it out, what kind of themes you can get from just like what's one word you can use to describe our company. And then that combined with this amazing process of like really digging in, what's the why, and really figuring that out. I feel like you can kind of craft a really cool brand strategy around your mission, your goals, your vision, and what your customers are saying about it. Like that's so
Yeah.
cool.
I think too, another piece that I think isn't talked about as often, because we get this foundational core that where we kind of just, you know, you do on a repeat as you're branding a company. But then I love, actually, have you ever seen those brand decks where it's just like a deck of cards and they each have like polar opposite words? So each card has like, and it's this full deck, and like, and so I went through this process once that I just thought was brilliant.
I'm
Um,
so intrigued.
they had three stakeholders from, so it was me and the CSO and the CEO, the chief scientific officer, and they were both the founders. We got in a room, we each got our own deck of cards, and they said, I want you to look through every single one of these cards, and whatever you think this brand is, I want you to
Ooh.
describe it and pick three cards. And so we went through, and it's arduous, right? You're like, well, is it this or is it this? Is it modern or is it more simple? Like, what's the right word here? And we had to end up with three each, and then we compared them to see how different we were, you
Cool.
know, our brains were. And they were quite, I mean, there were some ties, which was good. There are also some, actually more so between like me and the CEO, of because I was very focused on differentiation and he was
Yeah.
focused on and kind of more the visual artistic side. How does will the visual voice be represented differently? And he was thinking like the quality of the products, and both are super important.
Mm,
Um,
yeah.
and
Mm,
so we were able to come to this marriage between and have this really important conversation where I could say, well, yeah, that's important, but, and like, that's kind of a given though. That's not something that we're going to hang our hat on and be
table
out.
stake.
So, because and this company says, oh, they're the science, they're the cutting edge, right? They've already said that, but there's a gap in the market with
Mm,
someone who isn't positioning themselves this way. And so if we define ourselves with this type of word, and it totally connects to our mission, like what we're trying to achieve, then we can be very intentional about showing up differently. But also because our words are different and the vision's different, the visual voice is also going to show up differently
ooh,
than all these other businesses that are blue and silver. And I don't know, this kind of, we're going to be very intentional about being not that.
ooh, I love that because you're tying in knowing the market. So as you're going through this branding process, we talked about knowing
Yeah,
your
it's
customer.
not step one. It's not the step one is not what do we think?
Yeah.
It's after we already have all this data and we feel like,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So then next step is know the market and really, oh, so
And
good.
being intentional because you are allowed, you don't have to let the market decide
Correct.
everything for you, like there is room for creativity and to build something that's totally your own as long as it's linked back to those like the key elements of your business.
So good. Love it. So everyone out there who's listening, start with knowing your audience. Then take the time to really dive deep, understand your mission, your vision, ask those why questions. Then, how does this all play out with the market? Know the market, kind of suss that out and figure it out. And then, anything else that you think would be really good, Catherine, for our audience to know about, um, this branding framework?
Just then be creative and have fun, like push limits and take risks and get a little weird and then rein it in, like don't, I mean, obviously you need to match your brand, but I'd also say I think people stop at the strategy too much. I mean, if they are doing branding and they don't understand how strategy um, transitions into tactical, it's like,
Mhm.
well, how do I, what do the content pillars look like that are attached to this? How do the actual words that I use and the voice that I use? I think about this tech company that's here. There's in Utah, there's like 5 million tech companies. There's so many
Yes.
tech companies,
Silicon
and there's
South.
just more and more and more, right? And now it's like we have this whole different AI sector that's now part of this, and I can't keep any of it straight. I really, but there is one, actually, it's like a cryptocurrency company that stood out to me because they named the company Giddy and they went all in on this like cowboy motif. I just thought
That's so
there's this
cool.
beautiful balance between it's a clean brand, it definitely, but it has these unique illustrations and the voice is so interesting and fun and engaging. And so I think, and manufacturing is just incredibly diverse, right? Like you have companies that
Mm,
are going straight to market, like they're manufacturing their own product, managing their own e-com platform and selling, and it's all within the same like atmosphere. And then
yeah.
you have, right, like there's just someone I sell one, like last night I went to this thing, we make the carbon fiber resin that then turns into, and then we mold it into this part of this plane.
Mhm.
And the the creativity for each, like it's gonna look totally different.
Uh,
But you can always take risks and test limits, and just as long as you can kind of tie it back to what you're trying to achieve. I think there's always room to have fun with it. I just don't think enough brands give themselves even that little bit, even if they're a aerospace manufacturer, like how can I show up and be personable and be
mm,
interesting and have an event that people have fun at, or, I don't know, that we can just be humans together and just do and still do really, really great work. So that's something I'm always interested in trying to figure out.
I love that. That Giddy is so cool. It's so playful and fun. I think especially in B2B, I see that a lot of companies take their brand so seriously. They're selling really high value products and they feel like, oh, got to be all buttoned up because if people see me just, casual, they're not going to take my brand seriously.
I don't
And
think that's as much of a thing anymore.
I think that's absolutely, I think you're right on. I think that's changing. I think what a lot of consumers and B2B customers are looking for is approachability. And that, like we talked about earlier, that personal touch, that personal relationship type of thing. And, and if you think about it, like these companies, their best customers, I'll bet you these customers they've known for decades. Do you think when they're talking to them on the phone, they're like all buttoned up? No, they're not all buttoned up, they're having real conversations with them.
Exactly.
So it's like, why wouldn't you want to translate that wherever you're showing up in the digital world? Because you're already having those, human one-to-one, more casual, informal conversations with your customers. So anyway,
I know. And I would venture to just like end that with saying, if you have two companies they're selling the same thing, same price point, the value of each is incredible, you trust it, you're going to get exactly what you need, but one is more likable, you'll always go, you're going to gel with the people better, and whoever you're working with, there's just like those extra touch points that you just feel that just like, I just enjoy this more, right? Like I just enjoy this being in this environment more. You'll choose it every time. So
that is such a good point. People want to work with people they like. I mean,
it's simple as that. I mean,
so
let's just be real. People, it is important in business to be likable. I think there are businesses that are roles that you can have, like jobs that you can have where you're just so good at your job that and your specific area of expertise that you don't have to, I guess, you don't have to prove yourself that much. But as much as like we hate it and we're like, well, I don't care what anyone thinks about me. That's true. Like, yeah, be you, but like be the best you that you can be and show up for people and focus on other people. It matters. It really does matter.
yes. And you know what's great about that is when you do that, when you show up, the people who like you are going to come to you. They're going to be like, I like that person. I like what they have to say. I like what they stand for. I like what they do. I want to work with that person. And the people who don't like you, because there's going to be people who aren't going to like you, they're not going to be attracted to you. They're not going to want to do business with you. Great.
And that's okay. And that's totally okay. Yeah.
And isn't that a great thing? Because if you aren't showing up out there, you may have these like wrong fit customers that want to work with you and they realize, hey, I don't really like working with this person. But by showing up authentically online, you're able to kind of give them a sense of what they can expect before they even start working with you that you can't do if you don't show up in that way. So I love that, like a bit like accepting the fact that when you put yourself out there, not everyone's going to like you and you just have to accept that. But the people that do like you are going to love you.
And they're going to be your best customers too. They're going to be the person you like actually working with. So
yeah. Oh man, this has been so fun. I feel like we can just like talk all day, Catherine.
I know. Hopefully it's been helpful to those listening.
Yeah, we're going to have a part 2. Well, let's close this out, Catherine. What would you say? What would be your final words to companies out there who don't think branding is important? What would be your final words? What would be your final advice to anyone who's like, I'm just not sure about this branding thing? What would you say to them?
So this is a really good question. I think I would just return it with more questions like, do you think that being competitive in your market is important? Like these obvious questions. Do you think that retention, building a brand that people are excited to work for, or building an environment that is exciting to work in? Because that's a whole different part of it with manufacturing. Brand is not just about, workforce is a major issue in B2B, a lot of B2B industries. And it's essential to building the team that you want to build as well. So I think I really would like return it by asking some of those hard questions of, do you want to stand out? Do you want to get into other markets and get more eyes? So yeah, it's almost like I think that those who don't think that branding is important don't see the big picture, because once they do, they get it, right? And it's this underlying of everything that they're doing, and every action they're taking connects down to this. Because going back to this, my husband's company, he said everything that they do, every meeting, every event, every interaction that they have with one of their clients or customers ties back to that mission. Are we freeing you up to do great work? Like, are we making it easier for you to do better work? And if they're not doing it. It's out. And so I think any business can get behind that. I think there's like a lack of understanding of how it connects. So I would say I would talk to someone who knows, like, is an expert in it and can look at your business and just give you some thoughts, ask you some questions so you can ponder and consider how it could be better for you. So
I love that. Oh, such a great way to get them thinking. Again, going back to your why questions. It's so important when we ask ourselves those questions, because it really allows us to dive deep and really come to greater insights and awareness of what we need to do, who we are, and where we should go. So great. Catherine, thanks so much for coming on the show today. So
thanks
I want
for having me.
listeners know how what's the best way that they can reach you? How can they connect with you?
Well, you can definitely find me on LinkedIn, Catherine Bennett, Marketing Director of Impact. Hopefully you can find me that way. But my email, I'm happy to ever chat with anyone about questions that you might have, or just, a quick 15-minute catch up. So it's just Catherine at impactutah.org. Yeah, feel free to reach out. I'd love having conversations, meeting new people, and talking about all this stuff. So
Yeah, and Catherine's doing such fantastic work for Impact Utah. She just launched a new podcast a couple months ago now, right?
yeah, it was in the fall. So yeah, we're getting bigger and bigger names on there, and it's just so fun to see it take off. So
oh, I'm so excited for you. I love seeing it, and I'm looking forward to continuing to follow. And everyone out there listening, if you're looking for a great platform where you can learn more about manufacturing and problems and challenges that they're facing, tune in to this podcast that's produced by Impact Utah. And yeah, very cool. Well,
thank
thanks again.
you.
And thanks to everyone. Thanks, Andrew, for joining us. Thanks to everyone out there who tuned in. We appreciate you so much, and hope you guys all have a wonderful rest of the day. And Catherine, stick around for a second.
Thank you all. Okay, you got it.
Yeah.